Yeah, so I'm an alumni. I graduated in '93 at the Department of Microbiology and Immunology. I was in Dr. Michael Apicola's laboratory, along with Timothy Murphy and Tony Campaneri and a few other folks that have gone on into other places, and some who have stayed in Buffalo. A few people at the VA are probably still there as well. Um, so I spent about 10 or 15 years in industry, DuPont, Merck, Wyeth, Baxter Healthcare, and then I was in the federal government at NIAID for about 13 years as a scientific review officer and a program officer managing therapeutic development contracts. Took a little break, started my own business, helped trying to help companies develop therapeutics to prevent pandemics. And then I joined. I was asked to join DOD, and then a pandemic came, and I was asked how should we prevent the pandemic or stop it or what should we do? And I said, well, we're going to use these OTAs and we're going to put some solicitations out that people can rapidly respond to. And that's what we did. And we funded over $150 million in clinical research, phase two clinical trials for countermeasures that were agnostic to the pathogen, either oral or inhaled therapeutics. So I'm going to show you how we use these OTAs today for focus more on biological research, but they can be applied to a number of different areas. AI/ML technology, building databases. The government uses them, at least the DoD uses them extensively through consortiums, specific consortiums for specific scientific and technology areas. So, everybody knows how to get a grant through NIH and what the process is. And it's kind of a long term process when you think about it. And then if it's a specialized initiative, it takes longer because it has to be cleared by council and then put on the street. And then, you have to review the applications, then you have to score, and then eventually you award a contract or a grant or a cooperative agreement. It takes a long time. It's a lot of effort. It's a lot of effort for the agency, and it's also a lot of effort for the investigator. So, what is an OTA? It's another type of a way to fund things. It's an agreement. It's not a grant. It's not a contract. I would put it between a cooperative agreement and a contract, but it's a lot easier to fund. There's no FAR clauses. It allows for technology to be rapidly developed. Um, it can engage a wide variety of performers or a very small subset of performers. So they're easy. These applications are easy to construct. They generally, we only give you a month or two to kind of respond to them, and they're managed through consortiums. So, as a member of the consortium, which, like the one that I'm going to talk about, MCDC, it's only about $300 a year. UB can, it's only 30 cents, probably a faculty member to be a member of one consortium. So I think UB could probably fit that bill and join a number of these consortiums. And you already are a member of one of the consortiums, and we'll talk about that later. So we use these OTAs to do requests for information, white papers, enhanced white papers, and then larger proposals. But we don't necessarily have to fund based on a large proposal. We can actually use an enhanced white paper to fund. The level of work is less. The level of information that is shared is more concise and concrete, and there's no really not many frills in putting together an application. So they can range from 3 pages to maybe 50 pages tops, and the contract award could be maybe the award document could be 30 pages long with some appendices. So a very easy way to rapidly survey the scientific community for a technological need the government has in a short time period. So let's talk about that. And I kind of touched on this already. We have the ability to source a consortium of members, and those members actually work together to submit an application together, right, or a proposal together. So we evaluate, we select a competitive range, and then we also have a range called the basket range, meaning they're competitive but not quite the top ones, but we reserve the right to fund them at a later date. So the proposal goes into the basket. And the proposal goes into the basket for about 2 years. So we can pick from that basket for up to 2 years after the initial notification that you're in the basket. So how does it start? It starts with either RFI or a request for a prototype proposal. We can designate the size of the proposal, 2 to 3 pages to maybe 30 or 40 pages. Short and simple directions found in the announcement. I mean, the announcement's not a 30, 40-page announcement. It's probably a 4 or 5 page announcement on what we want and how we want you to put together. There's a short turnaround time, typically 1 or 2 months after the announcement to the submission date. It's reviewed by internal U.S. government scientists, military personnel, contractors, or sometimes we bring in outside consultants. And we have non-disclosure agreements, a blanket agreement that we can't share that information outside the federal government. And then after that, we begin negotiations within a month or two after submission. So we down select competitive, basket, and non-competitive, and we notify all the submitters of their status. And then what we then ask for is probably in most cases, but for COVID we actually really didn't ask for too much more. But in most cases we ask for a full proposal, and then we just use that basically to develop the contracting language on our end, and then we negotiate with the submitter to get the award. So, but it can come from a white paper, 2 or 3 page paper, and within 3 or 4 months you can be awarded a $10 million contract. So, or not contract, but OTA. So how do we do the negotiation award? Well, we usually have, this kind of gives you an idea of what's going to be in it. Statement of objectives with tasks and subtasks, milestones, very succinct milestones and deliverables. And then we want a task length, budget, and timeline. So at the end, the final contracting meat of the contracting document is 20 to 30 pages long. We exclude, there's no FAR-based clauses. We have agreement clauses, and mostly they're around data rights, IP, animal use, and human subject protection, depending what's in the contract. If there's no animal use and there's no clinical trials, then, that doesn't need to be included. And then the final contract is that 20 to 30 page document. And then along the line, when we're negotiating, we'll request publications, supportive documentation, PowerPoint presentations from negotiations, and they'll be appended onto the contract. And then the final award is made 6 to 15 months after the request is released. So for a federal contract, from a broad agency announcement or RFP, it usually takes between 2.5 and 3 years to get the final award. So this is a much streamlined process. But the amount awarded is actually about the same. So the final contract award, like I said, has a statement of objectives. We give you a period of performance. It could be a few months to a few years. Total available funds. So we obligate the money. Sometimes we obligate the money internally and you invoice against it. But in other situations, some agencies like maybe DITRA would actually give you the full amount of money, and then you just would send the paper copy of what you were using for that month or that task. And then after that task is completed, you provide the summary budget for that task and how the money was used for that task. We can also modify the OTA to include additional tasks. We can actually add money to the to the award fairly easily if we have the money. Sometimes you might have to wait to the next fiscal year, but in general, we haven't stopped a contract because we didn't have any money, or a award because we didn't have any money. So that's how that works. So you could pretty much have all your obligated funds for the whole contract if it's an 18-month contract in one full sweep. So we want to have a background information about the problem in the field, describe how you will solve it in the objectives plan. The work plan will be the details by task. They don't have to be very extensive, 2 or 3 or 4 lines for each task or subtask. And then a one sentence milestone statement of what will be achieved for each task and subtask. And then what the deliverable would be a report or material or product or both for each task and subtask. And then we go to the project management. There's a lot of things listed here, but very easy to accomplish. We do a post-award teleconference. There's a awardee locations report. So that just is for you to indicate where the work is going to be performed and who your subcontractors are and where they're going to perform the work. We have a kickoff meeting. We use a work breakdown structure to map out the tasks and the schedule, and then an integrated master schedule with everything put together. We do periodic review meetings, quarterly meetings, monthly technical progress reports, and this is determined really by the group. So for some programs, we just might have 2 teleconferences a month, and those PowerPoint presentations and agendas are the monthly report. So we'll have maybe have a quarterly meeting, but not a quarterly report. And then, but definitely we'd like to have an annual meeting and annual report just to keep track of what's been accomplished each year. And really, that serves to tell the story of the product development. We do a lot of product development. So if you're going to submit an IND or do a phase 2 clinical trial towards an NDA or a BLA, then there'll be a regulatory component to your contract, including interactions with FDA and a regulatory plan that we would review and you would update periodically. So at the end of the contract document, there's a payment schedule by task and fiscal year, usually a table listing the amounts and what's going to be done. And then a Gantt chart timeline with all the breakdowns of what activities are going to perform different times during the year, and also areas where you can indicate meetings with FDA or completion of a task, or note how the program is going to progress over time. What's neat about the OTA is once you have the OTA for something and we want you to continue to work on it to advance it even farther, we don't have to go out and do a competitive, a competition for that. We can just directly negotiate you for the next stages of work and then award another OTA for that work.
John, can I ask a quick question? And
yes.
Maybe you have this in a later slide, but based on your experience, the last time that you were here and we discussed this, I was extremely excited about the range of budgets, the dollar amounts that were available through these opportunities. Can you just say that a little bit, or you have that?
I'll address that.
Okay, thanks.
So ATI is the organization, the company that actually manages about 20 consortiums for the federal government, mainly the Department of Defense. You can basically go to ati.org and see what areas and what consortiums they have. I'm going to mention 3, mostly in the medical space today, but they are run really the same way. And then the one that we're most intimately involved with, I work for JPO Seaburn Medical. So we do the advanced development for therapeutics, vaccines, and diagnostics for mainly the biodefense pathogens, but we've worked with flu and COVID and a few other things as well. So you can see what the scope of the projects that we fund through the MCDC. It's called Med CBRN Defense Consortium, and I'll provide links at the end of the presentation to give you to allow you to access those websites. So basically, we have 304 members in the consortium. We have about 10% academia, larger universities like yourselves. We've over the last 15 years, we've awarded over $8 million worth of federal funding for the work. Now that's kind of skewed because of COVID, because there's some larger ones for COVID that we funded through this consortium in conjunction with HHS agencies. So, but still, I'm sure we're about 2 billion over 15 years. So that's pretty good. And then we'll talk about the values in a few more slides. So here are the current types of programs that we would fund under the OTA. So these are out on the website, and some they indicate when the submission dates are, and then you can go to the website and see these as a non-member. You can also go here and see what has been awarded. So we get, we have some awards, 6 million to 60, $80 million. But if you look at the other, and even ours, we do have smaller awards, $1 million or $2 million. A lot of those were for the COVID therapeutic clinical testing contracts. We started with smaller awards, and then we added money to them as we developed the clinical trial plan, and determined that it was going to be more expensive than we initially thought. But we got them going, and we added scope of work to the contracts, and also added money to the OTAs. So this is MTech, Medical Technology Enterprise Consortium. This has 664 members. There are a good part of them are academics, so there's probably 50 or 60 that are universities. This is the amount of funding they've put out, 991 million over about 15 years. So that's pretty good. And we'll see here that SUNY at Buffalo does have had an 800,000 award back in 2022 for a program, and then one of your friends down the street, Kubrick, had a $2 million award out of MTech. So it's pretty good. Here's the countering weapons of mass destruction, 340 members. A little less on the academic side. This is more corporate orientated, and more industry is involved in this consortium. Obviously, if you're making explosives and stuff like that, and other things, protective wear and armor, body armor, tank armor, it's mostly be coming out of industry. So what's neat is it's been more aimed toward DOD, these consortiums, but BARDA, who is the HHS product developer, they sit above NIAID for infectious disease. So a lot of programs from NIAID transition to BARDA, and they actually now are doing a OTA for next generation rapid response vehicles. So how do you respond to a pandemic? And they're going to solicit ideas and hopefully award some OTAs to fund that in a similar manner than as DOD. So they kind of borrowed from us on the way we do things, which I always thought it would be better to do it like this. And the problem is it's difficult to change a dinosaur, and the federal government and NIH and NSF are, pretty much have been there for a long time, and they have their certain ways to do things. And Congress has a certain way to fund things, and so this is refreshing, actually, and I think it's refreshing. Should be refreshing to academics as well, because it provides you a quicker source of funding. And if you get in a consortium and you have a piece of if you can do some research and R&D to support somebody else that's doing more advanced product development, you can come in as a contract subcontractor or partner or collaborator and reap the benefits of the OTA. We also use OTAs in DoD for broad agency announcements. Now, this type of OTA is not done through a consortium. It's done directly with the Department of Defense. So we'll put out a blanket BAA, and then we either will allow companies to submit RFIs or white papers, and then anytime during the 5-year period, we can actually contact one of them to actually submit a full proposal. And there's no competition. It's that if they have something that we need, then we can directly award them a contract through an OTA through this mechanism. So this is pretty neat. We have one on the street as well, JPO, and this is from, I think, US AMRID, or another division of the United States Army. So this is who would also put out requests, OTA requests, would be Naval Medical Research Command, US AMRID, DARPA, Defense Threat Reduction Agency, which is to us what NIAID is to BARDA. So we do the basic research here, and then they transition to JPO, CBRN Medical, usually after completion of a phase 1 clinical study, and then we take it on to licensure. We do a lot of work through the animal rule. So all the animal rule pivotal studies are done through JPO's funding and our oversight. And this is where I sit. I came here because I had worked on a 6 monoclonal antibody formulation of a botulinum antitoxin for A and B serotypes that cause 99% of all human cases and are the most probable strains that could be weaponized. So we have a countermeasure we can use for pre-treatment or post-exposure prophylaxis that we have completed phase 2 clinical studies and are doing pivotal animal efficacy studies with. So I managed this program at NIAID for about 8 years, and that's how I came back to DOD, because they asked me if I would be their subject matter expert. And at the time I says, well, when's the, what point in your life are you ever asked back to finish off what you started? So I decided to come back, and then COVID hit, and then we've been really busy. We reviewed over 500 white papers for COVID, and we triaged them down to about 20 that we requested enhanced white papers for, and we funded around 8 or 9. I think we still have a few that might be in the basket. So we also have another program called Vaccination by Modular Progression, and we funded again 8 or 9 RNA-based technologies to develop vaccines to viruses like Eastern equine encephalitis virus, Ebola, Marburg, hantavirus, and a few other viruses. So we actually have awarded all 8 of those contracts and are actively managing them. So here's the web pages I promised I'd share with you. I'm sure Jill's going to share you the presentation. And then I just want to say that let's start cooking with OTAs, UB.
Thank you, John. Wow. And you got through so much content in such a brief period of time.
Well, a picture's worth 1,000 words. So, I like using pictures in my presentations.
Well, it's no secret that Dr. Bogdan is a huge Bills fan, as you can tell. I think he's always wearing red and blue. But this was extremely valuable, and thank you so much for sharing the information. I think I'll have like one or two quick questions because you've already familiarized me a little bit.
I'm willing to stay on a little extra longer if people want to hang on till like 12:40 because we can facilitate any type of questions. Um, I'm willing to give you my another 10 more minutes or so. So I'm sorry, but I finished all my slides though in 30 minutes, which is my goal.
Which is awesome. Thank you. So, quick question. When you were here last time and you and I were sitting in a conference room and just sort of crunching numbers, one of the things that impressed me, and I know that some of this is self-selection, is that the funding rate seemed to be about 40% once people found a fit. Do you want to speak to that at all?
No, I think it is very high. I think a lot, even the federal government, in my experience with broad agency announcements, they were targeted really for companies that could develop drugs for certain pathogens, and whether it was a small molecule or a monoclonal antibody. So we actually do market research, and we know who's out there that could apply. So, and in general, we know how much funding we have, and we know that we can split it among maybe 10 different performers.
So thank you. And another question similar to that. So obviously the sites that you shared are extremely valuable and that people can go to look for upcoming opportunities. And we are investing at the university level.
Let me finish what I was going to.
Oh, sorry. Oh.
Hello.
Oh, there you are. Okay.
I had to rejoin. I don't know what happened. I lost connections. But what I was saying is, if you look at some of those slides, you'll see the awards weren't made all on the same date for these OTAs. So they were staggered, and so you don't have to award everything all at once. You can award it over the course of 2 or 3 months or 6 months, and then we actually go back into the basket. We've gone back into the basket and awarded additional OTAs for companies that were in the basket within that 2-year time frame. So. And we've awarded contracts anywhere between $1 million and $80 million. OTAs. I'm sorry, I'm using the word contracts because I did contracting for like 15 years, so I can't get it out of my mind. But this is not a typical. This is not a typical federal contract. It's a lot less work to manage, and also a lot less work to get, and a lot less work actually to report. I think there's a lot of burden and a lot of project management costs going into some of this work, and it's more administrative than actually project management for technical performance. So the government gets to save some money. The other thing too is sometimes with overhead rates change. Maybe with UB, it's probably pretty stable, depending on what department you're in or whatever. But for biotech companies or companies that are doing manufacturing, at periods of times in their performance of the contract, they might be doing a lot of GMP manufacturing and utilizing a lot of their facility resources, and their overhead could go from 50% to 150% just because of that during that time of performance. And the government will adjust, will add money to the contracts to cover the indirect costs, overhead rates increasing at different time periods too. So we're pretty flexible about that.
So John, can I ask one last question before we wrap? And I do have to scoot in a second, and so I'm so sorry. I have to tour somebody on the medical campus, but what is the best approach for investigators here if they're interested in this to reach out to somebody within one of the consortium or reach out to somebody within one of the agencies? Like, what are the rules on that, and how how much can they speak to them even before they actually submit something or after it's submitted and that sort of thing?
Yeah, so once it's submitted, there's a little bit of code and silence for a month or two. But before it's being submitted, it's a very open conversation. You can talk to anybody in any agency. I think I gave you that. There's a web link for JPO. It's called JET, and that's where you can register your lab or your university or whatever. But I would do it by lab, by principal investigator, and
Okay.
with your ideas and what you're working on, and they'll partner you up with somebody in the Department of Defense. The other way is to go to the consortium and talk to. I think there's people that you can contact to talk about how to join the consortium. Uh, they are very open about who the members are. So if you look there and you can call, say, Katie Edwards at Kubrick, right? Give her a call. I think they're members of MCDC. I think they're members of the Countering Weapons of Mass Destruction, and have conversations with people that are actually members of these consortiums. I think that's another good way. Hey, my door is always open. I'm a UB alumni, and guess what? Whether you're from UB or from UCLA, it doesn't really matter. If you have a good idea, I'm going to help try to shepherd it and put it in the right spot in the Department of Defense. And even outside, I actually interact with. I'm actually a technical lead for reviewing tech watch meetings for BARDA. I have contacts at NIH and I have contacts at DITRA, and I actually do not want to see a good idea sit on a shelf. It's not doing anyone any good by having it sit on a shelf and have people thinking about it but not doing anything with them. So sharing is very important. For being members of these consortiums or using these consortiums. You don't have to be a member. If you have a member that you know and you're going to be doing 10% of the work, they can submit as a member. If you have a collaborator that's overseas and you're a member, they can come in as a subcontractor or a collaborator. They don't necessarily have to be a US based company. To be a member, you have to be a US based company. And you have to have a DUNS number, or you have to be a university with a DUNS number. I mean, that's the way the membership works. In simplistic terms, we do have large traditional members, and they're usually like companies like SAIC, like I guess Grumman or GDIT. They're large companies that are consistently have OTA agreements in place. So the non-traditionals are ones that have one every once in a while, or maybe haven't had one for a year, and actually that's who we want to award the programs to. Small businesses. There's a certain amount of small business work we have to do as a government agency. I think it's like 23% of all funding has to go to small businesses. So there's certain requirements we have to do and satisfy on our end, and it makes it actually good for small businesses. And having a university involved is also a good thing too, because that opens it up to a number of people.
John, I have to.
Yeah.
We have one last hand up, and if I can, then I'll need to wrap up because I do have.
Okay, sounds good.
Dr. Halterman, you have a question?
Yeah, this will be real quick. John, thanks so much for the talk. Thinking through the presentation that you gave, it seems like academics make up, a significant portion, but certainly not the majority. Are the types of projects that you're funding intended to be sort of end of pipeline with a deliverable that will be moved out into general use, or is there discovery science in the pipeline?
Well, depending on who you're doing it through, if you're doing it through Ditcher, there's a lot of discovery going on there, or DARPA. I mean, it's more like space age science, so there is a lot of academic work. I do want to mention I'm a contractor for JPO. The company I work for is Logistics Management Institute, LMI.org, and I'm a principal there. And part of my job is to do business development, 10% of my time, but it seems like I spend more time doing that. So we actually have a nonprofit arm. We're actually owned by investors, but we have a nonprofit arm that has about 50 universities associated with it. And we actually help them with some seed money to get some programs or projects off the ground. So when we submit a proposal to the federal government, we usually do like omnibus proposals. It's a $1 billion over 8 years, and we're one of 20 companies that gets into the contractor pool. We like to have businesses or universities that are collaborating with us for areas that we don't have specific expertise in. So we use an arm of our company called the Forge to actually build up relationships with universities for programs that LMI is interested in advancing, and also interested in applying back to the government to perform. So you can always, if you have an idea or something, or you want to get involved or show what you can do, my email is jbogdan@lmi.org, and I'm always willing to take an email.
Thank you so much.
And with that in mind,
on that point, at the end, I would say, go Bills.
Well, I want to get one last point in. John, Dr. Bogdan, you have been so generous with us, with the time that you've spent, the follow-up that you've invested with investigators who are curious about the opportunities that you're familiar with. And I just can't thank you enough for taking the time to do this again for us. And then for always being so accessible and actually even sending us opportunities. So thank you for everything that you're doing. And I will definitely connect. I sent your presentation around to everybody, and I'll connect people with you if they have interest afterward. And I know that you've also had good conversations with Dr. Suji and the pharmacy teams about this great work that they're doing in infectious disease to try and grow their research footprint there. So thanks, John, and go Bills.